In this episode, we're discussing the law of assumption. We explain what it is and its main principles. We talk about the person who brought it to life. And we also discuss its ancient history, along with how modern day practices use it in ways you might not be realizing.
Let's talk about what intuition really is.
Let's look at all the places intuition and ego show up in your life.
Let's share honestly.
Let's do the research.
I'm Jamie Hayhurst.
I'm Heather Wood.
This is the Intuitive Girls Guide.
Hey Jay.
Hey.
We have a trendy topic today, which is a little bit hilarious. Because isn't it funny that certain things just really are so cyclical in what becomes trendy and what doesn't?
Correct. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about the law of assumption today. Mm-hmm. And we picked this because of TikTok.
Yeah, we've both been seeing it a lot on TikTok.
Yes, yeah. I've gotten tagged, or our page has been tagged a few times in videos about it.
Yeah.
So I thought we would break it down. We'd talk a little bit about it. Mm-hmm. Before you get worried, I just want to tell you we're not going to ruin it for you. We're not don't use it. We don't hate it. We do have some criticisms, of course, as we do for everything. Mm-hmm. Remember when your beautiful daughter joined us on our Obsessed segment on the podcast?
Yeah.
Okay, who could forget, right? Remember we were talking about recession pop and when things are difficult in the world, certain things come back.
Right.
This I think is very true for things like the law of assumption, the law of attraction, the feeling of things are so out of control and trying to take it back in yourself.
Yes.
Really draws people to these practices again.
Well, and when the economy is collapsing as it is at the time of recording, it's a perfect time when you feel like you have no control over something like that. Mm-hmm. It's in the hands of a megalomaniac. The law of attraction or the law of assumption makes sense. To feel like something to try, if you feel like you are out of control.
Absolutely. Yeah. I 100% agree. So just to sum it up, it's basically the idea that if you assume or believe an outcome you want is true or already here, you already have it, it will manifest into your life. Mm-hmm. This is what this concept is.
Right.
Now we'll talk about this more, but to me, this is a subcategory of the law of attraction.
Correct.
It's not that it's not different.
No.
It's just taking one of the concepts of the law of attraction and focusing on it.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
We'll talk more about that, but I feel that's a question people have a lot. Well, what's the difference? Not really a difference. I'll kind of split the concept up a little bit for you, but it's just sort of one of the ways to focus your brain to pull stuff in. That's part of the law of attraction.
Yeah, and I think both of those, those laws, I think are very accessible.
Yeah.
And they're not I know they are woo-woo, but to the average person, it doesn't require much.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt to try it.
No,
right?
I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, I honestly think that whole law of attraction thing that came out with The Secret all those years ago, I think that may have been what opened me up, reopened me up to intuition, being someone who was intuitive and had shut that down.
Yeah.
I think that might actually be it, because I think it was so mainstream.
I like that. I think for me it was a really exciting thing, because it was this way that these things were becoming mainstream.
Right.
It was being presented mainstream. So in a similar way, I felt that way too.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So I do think it allows for people to put a foot into the woohoo pool.
Right.
Which to me this is really just a personal growth thing too. We'll talk about this also, but
right.
I don't know if you've ever done cognitive behavioral therapy before. Just kidding. I know you do. So do I. It's all that also uses the law of assumption.
Yes.
Anytime that you're correcting a negative thought pattern, you are using these kinds of tools.
Right.
It's just giving different names and different, oh, this is in the psychology field.
Right.
Oh, this is in the personal growth field.
And this is science. And
exactly. So the concept of the law of assumption is credited to someone named Neville Goddard.
Okay.
I'm saying
Neville Longbottom. Not him.
Not him.
Okay.
I'm saying credited because, as per usual, there's question marks here for
Yes.
me, but we'll get to that in a second. I wanted to read you a quote from Neville.
Okay.
So he says, every moment of your life, consciously or unconsciously, you are assuming a feeling. Learn the art of assumption, for only in this way can you create your own happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That quote was the least weirdest, that's not great English, least weirdest quote I could find.
Least weird quote, yeah.
He speaks, please look it up. There's a lot of things on YouTube where you like his voice is put to stuff.
Oh.
Please look up the way he talks, because he's also a writer and he also writes that way, and it's a very strange,
it's like purposely confusing, like overdoes it, over talking.
yeah,
Well said.
but it's also like, my impression is that it's also sort of the way he's thinking. Like,
okay.
you get, it's very consistent. So I don't think it's like a put on
Right.
thing so much as just like the way his brain is thinking.
Got it.
So we'll get more into this, but like he had a TV show that was popular and he would speak that way on there. And I think it's why this grew in popularity when it did, because of, I think people were like really drawn to the way he was talking.
Okay.
That's a Heather assumption. See what I did there?
Got it. Yes.
I'm just,
Love it.
that's something I gathered
Yes.
based on research. Okay. So the difference between the law of assumption and the law of attraction, like I said, I do think the law of assumption is part of the law of attraction. But if you asked me, like, please very quickly and succinctly explain the difference, I would say, and tell me how you feel about this. The law of attraction is about feeling like, quote unquote, good to align with what you're trying to manifest. So you're trying to like vibrationally align with the thing you want. Yeah, match, exactly. Like it's the idea that like attracts to like. All right.
Right.
And then assumption is believing that the thing you want is something that you already have or that you already possess or you've already done.
Yeah, the law of assumption is how you match. It's like, it's a technique to create that match for the law of attraction.
Exactly.
Right.
So for example, if you were trying to manifest $10,000, great, let's work on that, right? If you're using the law of attraction, you are trying to align yourself with $10,000 and you're putting things out there and you're trying to feel really good about $10,000. You're like, what isn't? Let me shift that. Let me speak about how wonderful it would be to have $10,000. Like that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. The law of assumption, you would be walking around sort of tricking your brain into thinking that you already had got the $10,000.
Yes.
So you would speak about it like you already had it. You would think about it like you already had it. You would really focus on how it would feel to have an extra $10,000.
Because that gets you to the frequency that you need to match.
Exactly. It's a tool to align yourself.
It
with
sort of
a
forces
frequency.
you into that alignment.
And it also sort of does this like work around a little bit. I'm going to put an asterisk here because we're going to talk about fear in a little bit, but like it does a workaround of like your fears, because a lot of the fears you have are going to be about like the process of getting it and failing at getting it. And so you circumvent those a little bit.
Yeah.
They don't disappear.
Yeah, for a little bit. Yeah.
There's an asterisk there and there's plenty of other fears that will come up, but you do sort of get to sidestep that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a cheat code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to tell you right now because I'm going to say some criticisms too, but like I do think it's a great tool. I use this tool. You use this tool. It's excellent. Do I think that you have to do other work too? Like it's not just as easy as just saying something like that?
Right.
Of course.
Right.
If it was that easy, we would all have all the things we wanted.
Right. I think you can also see this when you talk about like this happening in different fields. Yeah. This actually sort of becomes like visualization.
Yes.
Like I was just thinking about, shocker, Tom Brady. Me of all people be thinking about Tom Brady.
What? Of all the people you could have said, I would have never guessed you would have said Tom Brady.
I know, but I always hear about him, because we're in New England and he's the GOAT and all that stuff. And people always talk about how he visualizes the win. He visualizes like the throw and it being caught and like how that feels in that moment. And like that visualizing that moment is, you then call that frequency to your body. And that's you're assuming the win. You're assuming the throw is completed.
100%. And that's That's a very astute thing to pick up, Jamie, because a lot of what Neville taught had to do with visualization.
Right.
And if you're hearing this and you're like, oh no, I'm not good at visualizing. I don't have the ability to do
I'm
that.
not either.
That's okay.
Right.
Like you can use other tools.
Right.
This is also coming, I'm going to get to the time frame of this and stuff in a second, but like this is coming at a time where no one was talking about the clairs or learning styles or being like, oh, that we should probably say like you could also, speak this. You could
Or
also journal it.
right.
Like, yeah, exactly. So, but yes, very astute, Jamie.
Thanks.
So just a little bit about our boy Neville. He was born in Barbados.
Okay.
He moved to New York at age 17, and this is in 1922 that he arrives in New York.
Okay.
He was a dancer who then became a writer and a TV personality.
Okay.
All right. I was trying to figure out, like, is this another white man taking on this concept? I can tell you that I'm not sure of his racial background, his cultural background. I tried to figure that out. I couldn't
tell.
Well, I couldn't confirm. There was a bunch of different theories, which is strange.
Okay.
So I don't know if it has to do with maybe the time. Like maybe that wasn't something he wanted
out there. That's smart. To know. Yeah.
So whatever. I don't know what it is. He does appear to be a white man. But I don't. There are question marks of his.
Right. He might be biracial, multiracial.
Exactly.
Okay.
Neville was also a religious man.
Okay.
So he was very, at least for a time period, into mystical Christianity. There was a fad about that for a while, the mystical Christianity. Like that's another thing that ebbs and flows where people start to like drift into that.
Right.
I think it's sort of like morphed itself now into sort of the like Jesus-y girls who do essential oils.
Yes.
I don't even mean it like
I know
in a bad way. I just mean like it's you don't really see it anymore, but you see the people who are trying to like reach into woohoo.
Well, no.
Oh.
No, those girls are trying to rationalize. They're trying to rationalize their use of essential oils and intuitive tools.
Yeah.
So they put this like religious spin on it. So they can live with it and live in their religion still. So they don't have to do any of that like cognitive balancing, right? You know what I mean?
Yes, agreed. And I'm not sure that that's not the case all the times that that sort of crossover has happened. To be honest,
agreed.
And it's not surprising that those things would keep trying to blend because most of Christianity's
stolen from paganism.
Yeah, their concepts, the things they do. So like it does.
It's like the circle comes back around. It's like you've gone so far, you've come back to the beginning of Christianity, which is the theft of all 100%. Pagan cultures.
It's like the Doreen Virtue circle.
Right, but then you got to be like, oh shit, I'm back in pagan land. I got to bring it back into Christianity, right? So it's like you see people doing this sort of like dance along the lines of where religion meets that because they do overlap.
Yeah.
But not because they're similar, it's because they're stolen. It's not because they're like morally the same.
Right.
They're stolen.
Yes. I'm holding back because I could say like a million things about this. But I think it's important to understand this because otherwise, historically, when things are happening, you're not going to understand the pattern.
Correct.
But it also happens typically when we're in an upswing.
Yes.
My throat chakra didn't like that for some reason because I want to be in an upswing and we're so far from an upswing now. I'm going to say that's when my throat chakra died. But when things are really good and then you see it fall when things are not doing as well. So you see that like sort of separation now. There's a lot of, people pointing and saying witchcraft now. So that's right on track with history. I know the quote like, those who study history are doomed to watch it repeat itself. But actually, please study it.
Right.
Yeah. And also stop repeating it.
Right. Exactly. Right.
So Neville also studied the Kabbalah, and he was really a big part of what is referred to as the New Thought movement.
Okay.
Which, as we were saying
in
before,
the 20s, 30s, 40s?
Yep, yes, is basically the combination of ancient pagan ideas and psychology, and then you sort of mix in a little bit of religion into that, and that's what you sort of have. Now, some parts of the New Thought movement were like not connected with it. Like they were actually like anti-religious, like go this way instead. But some were still bleeding in. We don't ever really see that separated because, like you said before, you can't really separate them.
Right.
You get all of them together.
Yes.
You can try, but it won't work. Okay. So the research of Neville is very difficult because there is not a lot of information that I can validate. There are a lot of like people who are coaches who like to use the law of assumption and law of attraction to like telling you about his life. And I'm not saying that they're wrong, but as a researcher, there's not enough to back up if those claims are correct or not.
Right.
So if you're like, why are you not telling us if he was a good guy or bad guy? The truth is that I don't actually know.
Well, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because it wasn't his idea.
Exactly.
This is a universal concept that people have been probably doing since the dawning of time. But like,
exactly,
it's as long as you don't become like a Neville Longbottom, a Neville
Goddard,
Neville Goddard like stan, and you're like, as long as you're not like doing like the teachings of Neville Goddard,
yes.
As long as you're not doing that and you're just actually talking about the law of assumption, then it actually doesn't matter because like you can actually take him out of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%. Listen, we'll get to this, but like nothing that he's offering for concepts is something he came up with.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? So like, does it discredit him completely? No. He played a role in bringing this into the culture and bringing it into people and the shift of this. And like I said, just look it up on YouTube of him. It'll just be like, there's a bunch of videos. There's like weird pictures in front of it. It's just his voice talking.
Okay.
Just listen and you'll understand the sort of like cult leader magnetism thing that you can just feel through his voice. All right. Do I think he was a cult leader? I didn't find any evidence to anything. I'm not accusing him of that. But there is a way that they speak that is red flags in my brain when I hear it. And it's like you said, it's like, it's not simple. It's not so that you really understand it. It's so that you're kind of like always floating just below this flowery language.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. So keep that in mind. Again, if you know a lot about this guy, you have like some valuable sources, send them to me. I would love to see it. But again, I'm not going to tell you a lot about him if I can't validate it. Great. But I found good and bad. So that's that.
Noted.
Okay. So let me just tell you the main principles of this. Again, research on this is slightly difficult. Unless I bought his books, I would not be able to, and read them all. I don't know that I could completely validate this, but I will get to a place where I do validate it. I promise. The concept, not Neville.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
But from what I could read on so many blogs, I gathered what I think are the main principles. Okay. Now, the reason that, like, normally I would just get the book. I have a lot of books on topics, but I don't have a problem with that. But the problem with getting his books based on what I read from other people's research is that the law of assumption isn't just in one of his books. It's like a concept he goes in and out of in all of his books.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So if there was like a law of assumption book, I would have happily bought it and told you. Right. But that's not it. And again, if you listen to him or even read something that he wrote, you're going to understand.
He's just like stringing you along.
I don't know that he's stringing you along, but he's not trying to simply tell you something that he came up with. Like when I listen to people explain NLP or NLP concepts, for example, neuro-linguistic programming, we have an episode on that.
We do.
NLP is done in a way, in my opinion, for most people that is very simple to adjust to. NLP is based on a lot of these kinds of things as well, right? When I hear someone speak about that, I'm like, okay, I understand, that makes sense. I understand how to put this into my own life. But when you hear Neville speak, and sometimes, some of the, I don't want to name names, but some of the like woo-hooey people who would talk about The Secret and all that kind of stuff, sometimes you'd hear it and you'd be like, what are they talking about?
Yes.
That, I don't like that.
Oh, it's like intentionally convoluted. Like,
yes.
Yeah, I don't.
So, anyways, that's what you find. So if I'm telling you these main principles and you're like, what about this one or that one? Yeah, I read those too, but based on like the 10 blogs I took these from, these were the ones that I felt like were the most legit. Okay. So the first one, and this one is one that you picked right up on, Jamie, is imagine the outcome you want and feel how it would feel to have it. Do a lot of visualization and a lot of affirmations.
Right.
Okay. So that you can even find lists of like law of assumption affirmations, but I'll save you some time.
Mhm.
It's basically you saying that you have already gotten the thing, achieved the thing, have the thing, and that you feel great when you have it.
Yep.
Okay. That's what it is. The next one is be consistent and persistent in your practice of assumption. So just can't just say it once. You have to say it like every day and create a little time and space to do that and like keep going with the visualization.
Yep.
This is true with all of these
All
concepts.
the things.
Yep.
Right.
And then the last one that I have is something called live in the end. That's his direct language. So operate like you already have it. Don't focus on the absence of what you want, but on how it would feel to have the thing.
Right.
That's just good manifesting.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, that's just a life, just like a good life lesson, is that, like, rather than sitting in the what ifs or the worst case scenarios or the, you know, the yucky stuff, like, I think it's always a good idea to live in the, like, possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to make a prediction right now based on the combination of intuition and highly researched concepts and studying of history. Are you ready?
Yeah.
I think that somebody very woohoo, possibly from that publishing company that likes to do woohoo stuff, is going to come out pretty quickly with a book about the law of assumption, and they're going to try to make it the secret again.
Oh, like a revival. Yeah.
Because they're seeing people talk about it. It's coming back up.
Well, and they're seeing that people are desperate and that the economy sucks and the world feels dangerous. And
this is really prime for someone to grab and kind of make it their thing because there's not a ton of information on Neville.
Right. Yeah, like nothing's trademarked or...
No.
Right, exactly.
So I think be weary, like pay attention to who it is.
Yeah.
I honestly I can't imagine there could be a whole book on it. Like, I think you could just read The Secret, but maybe that's just my opinion. I don't want to sound like one of those ladies. I remember these ladies when I was like a young lady. I remember the older women.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry to group us with older women.
Yeah, no, we're older.
It's accurate.
Yeah.
And they would be like, oh, this again, this used to be, and they'd sort of like,
oh, no.
Like you're saying, like yuck your yum a little bit because it had already come up and it was like a recycled idea.
No. Yeah, no,
I'm not trying to do that.
Absolutely not.
But to me, this is just The Secret again.
No, and I think the main point that we're trying to say is that, like, these are universal ideas.
Yeah.
These are universal theories. So I would never be against them coming back to the, to the sort of public consciousness. I'm always for that. I would just always be wary of when it's like trying to be sold to you.
Yes, thank you for articulating it that way. That's the part that makes me like who is trying to now make a lot of money off of this concept without actually being like safe about because you do have to be responsible when you're asking someone to like alter their brain.
Yeah.
You know, like, and you should be talking about the origins of these things.
Yes.
So, yeah.
No, I agree.
Okay. So I'd like to tell you about the origins of these things, Jamie, because that's what we like the best. It's like, where is this actually from?
Right.
Because I don't think this Neville man was I know
he definitely wasn't.
It's not so where does this come from?
Right.
I'll tell you. But first, I think we should take a quick break.
Okay.
All right.
We'll be right back after this short break. You know what goes great with podcast listening?
A great cup of coffee from a great coffee shop.
Yep, beans roasted in-house, amazing baristas. You know where I'm talking about.
Restoration Coffee. Can we go?
Yes, I need an Americano and maybe a panini too.
Ooh, I need blueberry maple latte and probably a resto bowl.
Ooh, yeah. Check them out and visit restoration-coffee.com.
Let's talk about what we're obsessed with this week.
All right, Heather. I don't have much that I'm obsessed with lately. But the only thing I could think of that wasn't being like Debbie Downer Dungeon was I am actually really obsessed and really proud of the recent protests that have been happening.
Oh, yeah, the hands-off stuff.
Yeah, the hands-off stuff and how like they're actually for once it feels like there's some momentum behind that.
Yeah.
People will like come together once and then like meh.
Yeah. I was really happy to see how like it was everywhere.
Exactly.
You know, like it.
I agree. I think that's
there
what
was
makes it stand out.
small town things. There was city that you went into the big city for it.
Mhm.
I mean, you live in the big city, but
Yeah.
you were out and about and
Yeah.
photographing and
Yeah.
so that makes me happy because it feels like we're actually like working together a little bit.
Well, I think that that's the problem in a country that's as big as America is
Mhm.
that you can't really have like a march on Washington.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm all for criticizing us as a country.
Sure.
I think we need it.
Yeah.
And we deserve it.
Yeah.
But when I see people like from other countries, say on like TikTok or Instagram, criticizing us about like, why aren't you taking over the Capitol?
Mm.
And I think people don't understand that like in France, you can get to the Capitol.
Yeah.
Like if you're in California,
Yeah, that's like a 7-hour flight.
right?
Yeah.
Like it's like days of driving. Like it's
Yeah.
not actually as accessible to get to like march on Washington. Like
Yeah.
yes, people will do it. Yes, we've done that in the millions a few times.
Of
But
course,
like
yeah.
it's not super realistic for a country of our size
Yes.
to like take over the Capitol. But
Right.
if you're taking over your
Your state's
capital in your
capital.
state
Yes.
or in your town, your
Yes.
town's like center,
Yes.
I think that's where the power is. And like seeing that happen across the country, I think was actually the most impactful part.
Can I bring up like a little side thing that I just thought of when you were saying
Mm.
this about when you're hearing people criticize America
hmm
and Americans?
hmm
I would like to know what your process is when people start doing it, like when you hear it, like
Me?
non-Americans.
Personally,
Yeah, because I've had to like work through a thing, so I want to know like how do you feel when you hear that?
oh, I feel like validated.
Mm.
Like I'm like, oh, okay, so at least it's globally people agree.
Yes.
Like there's something wrong here.
Yeah, because we're being gaslit by half of the other Americans about
right.
all of these things. So
and by the majority of the politicians that like
Yes.
we're overreacting
Yes,
or
yes,
it's
yes.
not that bad or
Yes.
whatever it is. So it's like, no, right, they agree over there.
Yeah.
And it's like everyone agrees.
Yeah.
Like our enemies are uniting
Yes.
against us to say how like insane we are.
Yes.
So for me, I mean, I think you're alluding to like that sort of like that patriotism.
Mm-hmm.
I think years ago I would have felt that like
Mhm.
that sort of like the programming of patriotism,
Yeah.
the propaganda of patriotism that I had to sort of fight back against. Like,
Yeah.
no, America, we're number one. America.
America.
Like, I never said that. Like, but I would have had to work through that. Now I'm like, oh no, like this is trash. And like, we need to call it out. And I'm glad that there are people across the world that see it and that
Yeah.
agree with us.
Yeah, I agree. I have this thing where first of all, I am very aware that they're not talking about me. So I'm
Mhm.
not doing the taking it personal.
Mm-hmm.
But I do sometimes have this thing where I want to explain what's
Hmm.
going on.
Yeah.
And that like some of us have been shouting for a really long time.
Yes.
And that's not the appropriate, I'm not saying like
Right.
it's not
Yeah,
it's
no, I
not a
get
bad
it.
response,
Uh-huh.
but it's interesting because I see a lot of creators who are coming on and saying these things about Americans and what's going on in America. And I agree, but now I see a lot of them being like, wait, I didn't understand. I didn't understand like how states in the country work. I didn't understand how big America was. I didn't understand
Mhm.
how this actually happened. Obviously, I'm saying that's like my own journey, but like, do you know what I
Yes.
mean? You
Yes,
have
I
to,
do.
You have to sort of work through this.
Yeah.
And my point for saying this is like, if that's you too,
Mhm.
like just keep sitting with it. Like
Right.
keep working with it. Keep talking to people about it because it's the same when, remember when so many white women had their panties in a bunch when black women were telling them we need to fix some shit. Like it's the same thing.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that is that like if your hackles are up about something, about talking about a group of people, it's because you're part of the problem.
Exactly.
So it's like white women when we were called out by
Yes.
black women. It's like white people like with the Black Lives Matter movement. It's like men like starting this not all men thing. Like like when I say something about men derogatorily,
Yes.
my husband isn't like, whoa, not me.
Right.
I don't do that because he knows that I'm not talking about him.
Exactly.
So when I hear someone from like, what's it called? Like Globe Talk or like
Yes.
World Talk or whatever,
Yes.
and they're talking about Americans, I'm not like, oh my God, not me, because
Right.
I know they're not talking about me, because I
Exactly.
know I'm not a part of the problem. I'm not
Yes.
MAGA. So like, yes, they're saying Americans,
Yes.
but
they're not
they don't
talking
mean
about you.
every single
Exactly.
American that exists right
Exactly.
now. So like, if your hackles are up about that, that's something to sit with, like you said, and look
100%.
at, because like,
Yeah.
it's your defensiveness at play.
And I think for me, and this could be like a sort of autism-y brain thing, it's when someone says something inaccurate that I like
You
immediately
want to correct it.
I'm like, no, it's
Right.
this. And it's
Yes.
like, that's so pointless because the
Right.
inaccuracy that they're like, yes, it would be better if you could understand what was actually
Right.
going on, or you missed this, or you clearly don't understand how far
Mhm.
it is from even Florida to
DC.
right? Like you
Or
don't
like South Carolina to DC.
Yes.
Right.
Right. Like but like if you are also triggered, it doesn't have to be in that way.
Right.
In these like little ways.
Mhm.
I just want you to know, like, that's okay.
Right.
But like that's your work. Like my work is
Yes.
going like, no, what the concept of what they're saying is very right. And
Right.
I'm very glad they're saying it. But like you can't get stuck in the parts that really feel
Right.
But
Well, because the main problem still exists, and if you're really stuck in the minutia and
Yeah.
the actual like accuracy of every single part of a
Mhm.
criticism, it's because that's the only thing you have to grab onto.
Yeah.
And you're probably afraid to look at the big picture and the big problem, which is accurate. Is it accurate
Yeah.
that we have problems here?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I think when you have to be careful in the thing that I'm talking about is happening to me specifically, of not like allowing that to make you the victim.
Mhm.
Because do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like,
Mhm.
because you can't sit there. You can't
Right.
be like, oh, they don't understand America, so forget
So
what
forget
they're
it,
saying.
right.
Forget all like the
Right.
stupid saying, throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's
Exactly.
that. So you've got to
Yes.
sit with it. So there was even I heard criticisms of the hands-off marches. Like I heard people saying those kinds of things, and like you still have to listen to them. You still have to go
Right.
like, what is it? You
Right.
know, like
Right.
there was a lot of white women, and people had some things to say about that. And you can't just get stuck in the but what about this, or you know what I mean? Like you
Well,
have to
right.
let yourself be triggered, but you also have to do the next step.
Well, and
before.
that's also like maybe it's a human problem, but it's also an American problem. Like someone actually said to me at the march, like said to me and my husband, like, where are all the young people? And it was an older white woman.
Yeah.
And she's like, where are all the young people? And I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
well, I was like, well, actually, thousands of them took a bus to DC and they're protesting the genocide in Gaza
Yeah,
right now.
right.
Like they're not, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's like, it's easier to infight.
That's yes.
than
That's
it
what I'm
is
trying to
like
say.
attack
Yes.
the problem, which is like
Yes.
that's the whole setup of this country, is that it's like we've said on other episodes, is like
Yeah.
it's easier to like fight side to side, left
It
to right,
is.
than it is to fight up and down between classes. And so it's easier to fight like between generations and
Yeah.
than it is to fight the patriarchy.
And it's also easy to just go, instead of being like, oh my God, look at this, to
Right.
go like, let me find something
I
wrong
know.
with it.
And I was
Yeah.
like, ma'am, there's 100,000
Yeah.
people out here.
Yeah.
You know, I said something to her. I said it kindly, but I
Yeah.
corrected her. But it
Yes.
was like, hey, like this
Look
is a
around.
good thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, should there like we could talk about this for hours.
I know. Could there?
But yes,
Could it have been more diverse? Yeah.
Yes, but we need to start looking at like the big problem and addressing the big problems rather than like nitpicking.
100%. 100%. Sorry,
Yeah.
I feel like I took over
No, I
what
like
you were
it.
talking about, but I just feel like I hear a lot of people spiral over things
Mhm.
like that.
Yes.
And so like I just wanted to share that like I sometimes feel that
Mhm.
too in my body of like, wait a minute, you don't understand what it's like here
Right.
for us. You don't understand what it's like to be afraid all the time. And like
Right.
then you're like, wait a minute.
Right.
This is not you're making it just about you.
About you.
You're making it just about your fears.
And you're taking it personally when they're trying to criticize us to defend us.
And you can educate.
Right.
You can say like, hey, just so you know, you're right. But also this. It
Right.
doesn't have to then become
A fight.
a fight.
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Whew. All right, Jay. So where does this concept come from?
Mhm.
Could it be that it traces back to ancient pagan times?
Yes.
Could it be?
Yes. Just like everything else.
Yeah. So I found a lot of like awesome resources for going back into this stuff, but I wanted to shout out one because remember I went on a rant about people asking me about my resources.
Yes.
But I do try to say them if I take a lot of things directly or if it's a small creator.
You always do.
Okay. So there is a National Geographic article by Kimberly Dadds, Dadds, that had so much great information about this. So I didn't just take it from there, but I did want to say that I got a lot of great stuff. So I wanted to thank her for that. But let's go back to Hinduism for a minute. Okay. So this is not pagan times because this is religion, but I don't want to only trace it back to there. I want to tell you other things too. I really feel like Neville's cross over into like the Kabbalah and getting all into that in like the Christian mysticism, like Jewish mysticism, Christian mysticism is where he grabbed this concept from. But that concept from them was also grabbed before that. But Hinduism's belief in karma, I really think you can take most all of this from.
Right.
So there's a 3,500-year-old Sanskrit text that basically says thoughts and actions influence personal destiny. And that's what they were explaining what karma was. Okay. I believe we have an episode where we talk about karma, so you can get more on that. But if I'm really trying to trace Neville's journey based on what I can prove for fact about Neville, I think he was learning that.
Right.
And he was then applying it and calling it the law of assumption.
Makes sense.
I also think a lot of modern day, like, think it into life or whatever, speak it into life, is taken from this concept and the way it's worded and the way it's presented. Okay. But if we want to go back even further, the whole concept, I think people miss this. So you might have to help me explain it because I feel so simple in my brain, but I might not articulate as well. The whole concept of calling in a god or a goddess when you want something, like let me call in, the goddess of spring, let me call in, Bridget, let me call in whoever across whatever culture you want. The whole concept of doing that is the same thing as aligning your thoughts with what you want, because you're just trying to call in the energy of the thing.
Right.
Am I making sense? Like this is the same concept.
Yes, it's just theoretically easier to do that when you give that power over to a god or a goddess. It's easier to say, they'll take care of this for me.
Yes.
Because when you start thinking about like, I'll do this for me, then all of your own shit comes into your brain.
Yes.
I'm not smart enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not whatever enough.
I'm going to screw it up.
I'm going to screw this up.
Too much.
Remember what happened last time? Last spring, all the crops died. Like, it's easier to believe in, I think, something outside of yourself that you've given this sort of omnipresent ability and power to, right?
Yes.
But it's the same energy.
It is. And if you think back to pagan times, it's difficult, but you have to remove the idea of like patriarchal religion, God and goddesses and whatever figures, even Jesus, all of those, like you have to remove those ideas for a minute. And you have to go back to these many different gods and goddesses who are imperfect. They aren't all light or all dark or all good or all evil. They're just sort of how nature is, like all of it.
Well, exactly. That's what it's based off of.
And then what you got to think of is you have to think of their survival of pagan times. So like you brought up the crops thing, which I think is a really great example. They're going to align themselves with the energy of the god or goddess or both of those seasons where they are, not because they think that they'll get into heaven.
No.
And they won't have to suffer for eternity in raggedy clothing, like bad clothing. Like they think that if I align with this and appeal to this energy, I will bring it to myself. I'll bring the good thing to myself.
Yeah, that's like one of the main differences with polytheism from monotheism, is that like there isn't like the threat of hell
Yes.
When you have many multiple gods.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. So this is, if you're like, I want to align myself with this, maybe you do that with an archangel. I want to align myself with Archangel Michael. It's all the same thing.
Maybe you do it with a color.
Yes.
Maybe you're like, I'm wearing red. This is my power color.
Yes.
It's the same.
Your lucky number.
Correct.
Get a shamrock in your pocket.
I wear this perfume when I'm going for a job interview. It's all the same. You're calling in the energy. 100%. It's easier to say though, like, oh, I've got this color on, I've got this suit on, or I've got this, rather than to be like, oh no, it's me. I'm presenting that. I'm doing this.
And there's nothing wrong with like using things to align yourself.
No.
Because it's really
powerful.
Fucking hard to stay aligned with things.
Right.
You got your own shit in the way.
Yeah, no, and your brain's constantly creating stories and collecting data to tell you, like, to keep you safe.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So the thing is, like, these ideas are taken from ideas that humans have always believed.
Right.
There wasn't a time it didn't. When you mix it in with religion is when it starts to like crumble in concept a bit, and why we do this weird big circle like we always talk about, where now we're into the psychology of it and we're into the science of it, when it was all just a human
experience
and a instinct and intuition to know, to align yourself with something.
Right.
It's why we put treats out for the fae, and why, like, it's all that.
Yep.
You know, if you leave cookies and milk out for Santa, you're doing pagan shit. Like,
you sure are.
This is what this comes from. So even a concept of karma in Hinduism comes from this thing where you know there's a bigger force, and you need to align yourself with it in order to get the result you want.
Right.
That's that.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I also want to talk about Hermeticism, which is a tradition based on both ancient Greek and ancient Egyptian traditions. It's like combining them. Is that weird that we combined them? It sounds it, but if you study history, you'll understand why those two populations, everything got mixed together at one point. Yeah. And if you're like, wait, let me see what actually was Cleopatra's ancestry, and you're like, oh, she was Greek? What? Yeah, study that part of history if you're interested. It's very, very interesting. But Hermeticism is, again, an ancient tradition, and it has 7 universal laws of creation. Okay, so I'd like to tell you them because I think you can hear a lot of current law of attraction, law of assumption, things in them. Okay. And I have oversimplified these for the sake of the podcast. Just please, if you're like, wow, that was disrespectful that you just said them in 3 words. Just for the basic concept. Okay. Yes. All right. So the first one is mentalism, and that is everything originates from the universal mind. Second is correspondence, connection between individual and universe. So this is the as above, so below.
Got it.
Vibration, like attracts like. Literally how they write it. Polarity, dual nature, opposites. Without dark, there could be no light. So that's the idea that, like, balance, but also without desire, there would be no fear. Without fear, there would be no desire. Like, you can't do one without the other, which is, we'll get to in a minute, is my main criticism of any of these things. Okay. Rhythm, cycles, seasons, everything ebbs and flows. Cause and effect, every effect has a cause. Everything is the result of something else. And then lastly, take a breath before I say this one, because people get this really wrong. The law of gender. So this is that everything has both masculine and feminine aspects, and both can be expressed.
Perfect.
Okay.
We've talked about gender so much.
I don't even want to do it anymore. I'm tired of saying it, but I don't want to miss an opportunity to say it to someone who maybe hasn't heard us talk about it.
Yes.
So I'll just say that in this here, we're talking about energy. We're not actually talking about modern day gender and what we've assigned to it. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Okay. So obviously, if you then break down any of these manifesting laws, assumption, attraction, whatever, you see all of those concepts in them. And those are thousands of years old.
Literally.
So also a big part of pagan culture was alignment with nature. And you also have to remember that pagans saw nature as divinity. Like nature was divine. The planet was a god itself. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
like
Yes.
these, we didn't see it as like a sky daddy.
No.
Okay.
No,
So
we didn't.
that, I really do think though, if you think of it that way, it helps you. Like everyone
Yeah.
was just trying to align with what was going on. You're trying to align with the season. You're trying to, you
Mhm.
know, and I say this a lot too, but like, do not feel shame if in the fall you want to put on your tall boots and go pick apples like everybody else.
Right.
I'm sorry that it cost you $800,000 to do it
That,
now.
yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're drawn to that is not being a basic bitch.
Right.
It's because you're aligning yourself with the season, which is a smart thing to do. It's very witchy.
Agreed.
Another big part of pagan culture is storytelling. And why were they telling stories around a fire? Just because they had nothing else to do? No. They were telling stories to teach lessons, to align yourself with certain things and to understand what to be afraid of and what to use desire for. So, like, give me any ancient fairy tale. There's an episode on them.
Mhm.
And I will tell you what your ancestors were trying to warn you about.
Right.
Okay. Like, that's what we did.
Mhm.
And then lastly, so very many rituals to manifest.
Mhm.
And every time you sit and you do an affirmation, you are doing a ritual
Mhm.
and you are using it to manifest. And so, you know, your ancestor may have had a broom above the door.
Right.
They may have blown cinnamon out the front door or
Mhm.
in the front door, depending
Mhm.
on your practice, right? Like,
Mhm.
those are all the same things. And those are all using things to align yourself with what you want.
Exactly.
So, not new.
No.
Okay. The modern day law of assumption and attraction teachings leave out fear altogether. And I will die on the hill
Same.
of saying this is the problem with it.
Same.
Okay. So if you're like, what is your criticism of this? One, people should be referencing where it actually comes from more. Two, you can't skip the fear part. You can't just,
You can try.
yeah. I mean, yeah, right. You can, but it's not going to work. I can tell you exactly what's going to happen.
I know you can.
It's going to work for a couple days.
Mhm.
And you're going to be like, maybe even a week, you're going to be like, wow, this has
feels
changed
great.
my life.
Yep.
And then it's going to hit like the 1.5/2 week mark and it's all going to fall apart. And it's going to be a fiery car crash of everything you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Because you
Self-doubt
didn't
Yep.
bring fear into the equation. Fear is just as important as intuition. And I know that's not like the sexy thing for intuitive people to say,
It's not.
but my goodness, you're never going to get anywhere unless you just like listen to your fear and you shift your relationship with it.
Right. Exactly.
So yes, if you're trying to manifest $10,000, sit there and use the law of assumption and imagine yourself having it. Imagine you already have it. Talk like you've already got it. Like, you can't wait. Like, I've got it. I'm going to do this with it. Do all of that. But also sit with it and go, what comes up for fear around me having it?
Right.
What comes up for fear around me getting it? And what does that mean? And then also work on shifting those things. Then you'll get it. And you'll keep it.
I mean, when has ignoring fear ever actually worked? Like,
Never.
in any story you've ever heard, any book you've read, any movie you've watched, any old wives' tale you've heard, like in any episode of this podcast you've ever heard,
Right.
we will always forever be talking about fear because that's your body, your brain,
Mhm.
your intuition trying to keep you safe. Your
Mhm.
ego wants you safe. That's
Mhm.
its job.
Mhm.
So you can ignore that for
Mhm.
as long as you possibly can. But at the end of the day, the work
Mhm.
that we always talk about is looking at those fears, looking at the vows, the stories we have written about things, the beliefs we have written about things in our minds that we hold in our bodies.
Mhm.
And until we look at those, you're only going to get so far. But just
Yeah.
like steamrolling
Yeah.
with like positivity and like positive thinking, it's only going to get you so far.
100%. The thing I can compare it to, because it's the same thing just in a different form, is how everybody like quits their New Year's resolutions
Yeah.
after like 2
Exactly.
weeks.
We have an episode on that too.
We do. It's the same thing.
It's the same
And
thing.
it's the same energy that people go
Right.
into this with.
Yes.
And I'm not saying it because I don't want you to use it. We
Mhm.
want you to use it. We're saying this because we want you to use it well. We want you
Right.
to use it the way it was originally intended.
You're just missing an entire chunk of the puzzle
Yeah.
if you don't look at where your fear is.
Yeah. I mean, you'll manifest like some money all of a sudden. And then the next day, like your car will break down and it will cost double the amount of money you just manifested. And you'll be like, what has happened?
Yeah.
And, then I see some articles where like the law of assumption ruined my life. And I'm like, no, it didn't. You just didn't actually work on the fear part too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can't grow or change until you heal those parts of yourself.
Yeah.
You're never going to obviously fully eradicate fear. Like fear is what keeps you alive and keeps you safe. But like until you start to heal that stuff,
yeah,
your body and the universe are going to put the brakes on.
Yep.
Until you can start to like acknowledge those parts.
And fear in our culture is not taught in a way that is empowering. And that's on purpose.
Right.
You're taught to fear things, and that like, fear is outside of yourself, and fear is a weakness, and fear is this, thing like you said, to eradicate, like no fear or whatever. And none of these things is true. But if you are empowered in fear, if you can listen to your fear and you can use it and you can move with fear as like an ally instead of an enemy, you become incredibly powerful.
Right.
I mean, really and truly, like there's nothing you can't navigate around and through. And the thing is that that's also not sexy, because doing things while you're afraid and while fear is like your co-pilot is tough. Right. But if you learn how to like rewire your reaction to it, it really does change everything. But it's very difficult because since you were born, you have been taught a completely different thing about fear. Right. Fear has been used to control you.
Exactly.
So it's tough.
And so, to bring back Tom Brady.
I can't believe you brought up Tom Brady twice. Well,
it's just a callback, but like, I feel like Tom Brady, like an elite level athlete, is absolutely doing work on fear. But it's that sexiness that you talk about, that like, it's not sexy to talk about Tom sitting and talking to a coach. Yeah. Or I'm sure, maybe as a therapist, I don't know, like whoever he's talking to, right?
Yeah, right.
They're talking about like, what do you fear? Yes. What's the fear? What happens if you throw the ball
and you're intercepted?
Fear into
fuel, and
right? Yes, like so, like I'm sure he's talking about that. Like, and then the next step is, I'm afraid I'm going to throw the ball and it's going to get intercepted. Yeah, and then I'm going to be embarrassed and a laughing stock. And you work through all of those thoughts about what that fear means for you. Yeah. And then you do the visualization. Yeah. Then you do that. Then you imagine yourself throwing the game-winning touchdown. Yes. Right? And then you feel in your body how it feels. You assume that win. Yeah. You feel it. And then you can get your cells and your frequency up to that level of vibration that you need it to be at. But if in the back of your brain's going, you're going to fumble that shit. You're going to throw it. You're going to drop it. Someone's going to tackle you from behind. Yeah. What happens this? What about that? Yeah. What if this happens? Yeah. You can't visualize it. Yeah. And because it's always that like nagging whisper.
It is. I think actually, I mean, I do enjoy making fun of you, especially when you do a sports reference, but I actually think it's very valid in this case because there's like, people act like it's so different, like the sports bros and what they do. And then like they're actually using law of assumption. And you're like, wait a minute. But one thing I'll add about Tom Brady, because apparently this episode features him.
Call Tom. Let's see what his process is.
Tom Collin. I've heard him speak before about fear. Mm-hmm. He was actually a part of, like, you spoke at something.
I know. You're gonna say Tony Robbins.
I was gonna
say, like, I don't care. I'm saying it. Okay. Because Tony Robbins is like the acceptable version. He's the NLP version. Sorry, he's the NLP version, acceptable version of intuition, manifestation, visualization. Like, he's like the bro version of that.
Exactly. Okay. So
with his own bro issues.
100%. I've talked about it so many times. We have issue with him.
We do.
Yes. I love him, but I'm mad at him, and he needs to consult me on what he does next in his life, as everyone does.
Yeah,
really,
well, Tom and Tony can call.
Okay, both of you can call. But in this thing that Tom spoke about, he talked about how he uses fear. Okay, so I'll just give like a brief example because some people are like, "Will you guys stop fucking talking about sports?" That's
never. I'm now only talking about sports.
This is now a sports podcast. So he was talking about how, like he'll be asked stuff like, during halftime, you guys are down by all these points. Like, how do you come back out there without the fear of like losing? And like, how do you have a good attitude? And he said, well, I don't fear losing. I just accept it as a possibility. Otherwise, the whole time I'm going to be worried about losing. So I just say, well, it could happen, but we could also win just as much. So let me focus on that. So he acknowledges it. He sees it there, but he doesn't let it become a big thing, and he works with it.
Until you address the fear, it's the monster under the bed.
But those aren't the things quoted in like the sports things that Tom has said. It's just him talking about like all his visualizations that he does, not so much about like the work he does with his own relationship to fear, except if you saw him speak at like a Tony Robbins event and then you were like, oh, he does do all of this too.
Exactly.
So I do think it's an important thing, but like, yes, all these guys are doing that. Yeah. Okay. It's like all the billionaires having astrologists on and then being like, witches. Yeah.
Right.
So I mentioned this before, but I think it bears repeating, is that like if you've ever done CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy with a therapist, they use the concept of and I'm going to oversimplify again, but you sort of go through and you talk about and you catch where these negative thought patterns are, and you work through them and you work on them. You don't necessarily eradicate them, but you shift them. Okay. And so most times you're going to a therapist, you're probably doing this kind of therapy. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So it's the same. It's all the same, everybody. It's all the same. It all comes from the same place. It really does work amazingly if you also include fear. It really does. You'll have your Tom Brady moment. You'll become the next Tom Brady. I guarantee it. Yeah.
Yep.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like it really does work better, but it's not like just as simple as if I just keep repeating this affirmation or do this visualization, I'll have it.
Right.
It's going to also bring up a lot of your shit, and you're going to have to work through it, and you're going to feel messy, and that part's tough, but it does work.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then lastly, I have to close with this, and it might be the new thing I close everything with. I don't know.
Okay.
I have too many soapboxes, so I probably can't claim that, but don't use any concept ever as an absolute doctrine. Like, don't be like, now my whole identity and my whole life is just the law of assumption, or I'm only going to use the law of assumption. Don't do that. When you catch yourself doing that, take a breath, take a beat and stop, because that's a patriarchal religious concept. That's that. Everything is a tool, and like you take that tool and you learn about it, and you go, does this work for me? How would this work for me? Could I use this in a way? Let me try it. Let me see what happens. Let me make it work for me. Let me not use it anymore because it's great. It works for you. I don't like it. It doesn't work for me. That's what you should do with all of these tools.
Exactly. Such a good point.
I just feel like I see it. Like it becomes trendy, and then all of a sudden it's your whole personality, and people are like, now I'm a law of assumption coach. And I listen, there's nothing wrong with that. That's probably a great thing to be, but like just keep it as one of your tools, because you're going to have to rebrand yourself in a hot minute when the next new thing comes out.
Right.
Yeah. And it's okay if it doesn't work for you.
Yeah. And you're going to find yourself sort of stretching to make everything fit into that law of assumption coaching thing. You like this bit you've created. You know what I mean? Like there's no one concept that like fits and works and explains everything.
And I really just think you could stop so many wars from happening in the world if that was accepted. Everyone's just always fighting it, and it sort of calls back to our obsessed segment that I like railroaded you on and took over, because it's like if we're just always being like this or that, you know, the thing that I talk about, like that polarity that I can't stand, because it's so dangerous, where you just identify as this and not that. And it's like, if we keep doing that, we're going to keep sinking.
Yes.
You know, like you have to be careful not to do that. So if you study this stuff and you like it, awesome. It will also save you from being dragged into a cult.
I was just going to say
because we love cult documentaries. We love learning about cults. We have episodes on cults. We have episodes on the documentaries we watch on cults. We love them. Yeah. We've explained the connection between the intuitive girlies and loving true crime and cults documentaries before. But the thing is, like, that is someone giving you an absolute concept.
Right.
And you going, I buy it, and I fully believe that this person, I can 100% trust, and like my instincts are wrong, and if it's not working for me, it's something wrong with me. And like
Right.
that belief will hurt you, whether it's a cult or an abusive relationship or a job, like whatever.
Costs. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's all on how it works for you. I know people like to be like so witchy, like outwardly, and like make their identity being witchy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with that. I like it. It's cool. It's great. I have like a pretend haunted ring on right now. Like I'm in. I'm not criticizing it. Yeah. But what's actually the witchiest thing you can do in the whole entire world is to just take all the concepts and use what works for you. That's intuition. That's really being pagan witchy.
100%.
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
All right, I'll like slowly step off my soapbox and I'll put it to the side. But I really do think use this, try it, see how it works for you. Mm-hmm. Please don't exclude fear. Have it next to the affirmations you're doing, have a little journal entry about the desire you were experiencing and the fear you were experiencing. Why do you want it? How do you want to feel?
Right.
And what are you afraid of? What is your ego telling you is unsafe about this thing? Because you don't have it already because of the unsafe part.
And in that practice, those voices are going to come up. Those thoughts are going to be like,
yes,
what, bitch? You can't do that.
What are you talking about? Who do you think you are?
Write that down.
Yes.
Make a voice note. Talk to your friend about it. Talk to a therapist about it. A coach.
Excavate that a little.
Like look into it, but and then do the affirmations. Then do the visualizations. But like pay attention to both.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the work.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I also, while I'm paying attention to both, I think I need some coffee.
Yeah,
should we go get some? All right.
Hey everyone, Heather and I have an ask for you. If you love this episode or if you love the IGG, can you do us a favor? We need you to go onto whatever platform you listen on and download, subscribe, like, love, whatever it's asking you to do. Can you go do those things for us on the platforms that you listen on? It would mean so much to us.
Thanks for listening to our episode. For a way to get in touch with us, please visit our website, intuitivegirlsguide.com. We love hearing your feedback on our episodes.